How do you open an offshore bank account in just one day? I'm going to explain my process in this video. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson, and if you'd like to learn how Nomad Capitalist can help you with your holistic offshore plan where all the puzzle pieces fit together, you can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. So let's talk about opening an offshore bank account. We've got a lot of videos here on our channel about how to open an offshore bank account, where to open an offshore bank account, offshore banking for wealthy people, for high net worth individuals, for people with not a lot of money. Should you open a bank account with not a lot of money? Go and check out our playlist on offshore banking. But one question that I get asked recently is, how long does it take? Because what a lot of people who come to me say is, I'm willing to travel to open a good bank account that gives me what I need, that's a strong bank, that has online banking, all the services I need. But I'm running a business, I'm enjoying my life wherever I am in my home country or wherever it is I'm living on a nomadic level. And I don't want to spend a lot of time opening a bank account. So I look at the bank account opening process at its core level. There's two different ways to do it. The first way is remotely, and the second way is in person. Now, I've talked this year about how I think remote bank account opening is becoming a bit more difficult, a bit less interesting. I think that in many cases the fees are just too high. By the time you pay all the monthly fees, the account opening fees, sometimes there's FATCA fees if you're a U.S. citizen. There's online banking fees. They charge you $100 to receive a wire. By the time you pay a lot of those fees, you might as well just book a flight for somewhere for $1,000. And so there are a few good banks where you can still open bank accounts remotely, i.e., you sit on your couch, you fill out some forms, you send it in the mail through FedEx, and they review it. Now, is that going to be done in a day? Well, maybe your part of the work can be done in a day. Those banks tend to have higher due diligence standards because they're not seeing you. They're relying on everything being stamped and certified because they can't do that themselves. You're not there, so they have to rely on getting that stuff. Probably going to take you more time to do that when you actually, if you're excluding travel time, it's going to take you more time to open a remote bank account with most banks. There are a few good ones left, but a lot of them, just aren't really worth it anymore. Now, the other way is to do it in person. And so now among the banks that you would open in person, I would really put those banks into two types of categories when it comes to speed. One category are the banks that are just regular retail banks. They wouldn't consider themselves offshore. It's just a bank in a different country. There was actually one bank that really got on my case. I praised them on our website, and they said, no, we're not an offshore bank. No. I said, listen, anyone who's not from your country, it's like an offshore bank to them. It's an international bank. It's a foreign bank. Okay. So you have just regular retail banks where people go in, and those banks just allow foreigners, in many cases on a tourist visa, to go and open a bank account. They don't have a particular standard of rejecting everyone who doesn't live there. And so the other banks are specifically what you would call offshore banks, banks that cater to non-residents, expatriate banking, offshore banking. So these banks, are generally in Switzerland. Now, there are some retail banks in Switzerland that will take people, but people in Switzerland pretty much know the deal. If you don't live there, they know why you're there. Luxembourg, any of the big banking centers, Singapore to a lesser extent. And so in these places, you may be able to visit and just spend one day there and then leave. But in some cases, their process of checking on you and doing their due diligence is higher. Why? Because they're going into it knowing this is a non-resident expat offshore banking situation, and they have to take their time to check because their reputation is on the line. Many of these offshore banks are located in higher brow jurisdictions. Again, the Switzerlands, the Singapores, the Hong Kongs. They want to make sure everything's in order. Now, in some cases, they can approve you on the spot. If you have a connection to the country, that can make it easier. For example, if you have a home in Singapore, they're going to look at you better than they would someone who just showed up on a tourist visa, who's never been there before, has no connection to the country. And so those, in many cases, can be stronger banks. Some of them are on the top 50 strongest banks in the world list. If you want, total speed, then the retail banks are going to be better. In two countries I've talked about before are Georgia and Armenia, because they are two of the rare countries where you can go as a tourist, open a bank account with a passport. The process is not that difficult. Now, it's technically not in a day because generally you need to come back the next day to collect your debit card. theoretically, you can have a bank account with no debit card. In some cases, they make you come back the next day to get your online banking details too. You probably do need that. But I would say that's the closest thing that you're going to get to a day. And so the reason is that these countries are not, offshore banking centers. If you look at the list of all the offshore jurisdictions, Armenia is pretty low on the list. It's not even on the list, right? And so it's not a huge concern for them. They're not really familiar. It's more of a thing of, I don't know, why wouldn't we accept non-residents? Whereas, in Singapore, Switzerland, Isle of Man, whatever, et cetera, those jurisdictions have built ourselves around it. We take non-residents, but we got to protect ourselves. Some of those higher brow jurisdictions are under more scrutiny, or they're in the European Union or that kind of thing where there's more work to do. So the point is, your effort, the time that you put in to open an offshore bank account may not be that substantial. I do think that as we go forward, for most people, remote bank account opening is not going to be the best solution. It's not going to be in the long run the most cost-effective solution. And in most cases, not all, but in most, you're not going to get the most cost-effective and best product. There are a few banks that are an exception. So my advice is, if the goal is to open it in one day, you probably want to go to a retail bank in a more off the radar or in a smaller jurisdiction. Okay, nothing wrong about going to these places. Obviously, if you have reporting requirements in your home country, you should report your bank accounts. You should follow the law. We're not trying to be off the radar in terms of not following the law. We want to make that clear. But as with anything, once something is on everyone's radar, it becomes more scrutinized. And so if you are willing to go places that most of the people aren't going, if you're willing to follow the advice that we talk about here on this channel, we give even more advice to people that we're working with about how to do this. But my philosophy is do stuff differently, and you'll get better results. And so I think if you look at these more emerging jurisdictions, you can open an offshore bank account faster. That said, I don't think that the pressure of going to Singapore or Austria or any other more advanced hub is really that bad. So how to open an offshore bank account in a day is a matter of perspective, but the time required to do so is really not that big of an issue in my opinion. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.